and welcome to this episode where we are going to challenge our mindset so that we can live lives we love. That's the name of this channel, right? The Love Your Life Show. And that is what I am here to help you with. I'm a mindset coach that helps us challenge beliefs so that we can have our best possible life. Why? Because I want that for you. Today's guest is going to help you with that. We had a great conversation. Allison Davis is on the show. She's an author, a traditional naturopath, and a mom of 5 who pursued entrepreneurial business in the world of natural health for the last 14 years. With her new book, 60 is a Good Start, A Powerful Body, A Purposeful Life, and a Plan to Make It Happen, she advocates for reimagining life for us all. She inspires women to embrace aging into life as a time of opportunity, vitality, and purpose. And that's why I wanted to get her on the show for you. That we need to sort of put aside maybe what we see around us or maybe what's been modeled for us as aging, no matter your age, whether you're 30, whether you're 50, like me, whether you're in your 60s or 70 or beyond, like put that aside and come back to us and what do we want? What do we want to believe is possible? Well, that's all in our mind, in our mindset warriors. You know, that's the stuff we do on this show. And so I wanted to have her on to help us challenge our mindset and to bring us real and practical ways that we can do that so that you can live a life you love for your whole life. Let's go. All right, and welcome, Allison, to the Love Your Life Show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
I am so excited to have you here for so many reasons. And one of them, I just want to sort of cut right to the chase is that a lot of our listeners are in this age where, whether they like it or not, they might be defined as middle age and
Yep.
above. And they are feeling, a bit of like aging is something to dread rather than embrace. And I know a bit about you, and I've been following you on your platforms and see the positivity that you are embracing this next stage with. And I would just love if you could maybe tell us why you're doing what you're doing and in helping women sort of redefine how they're viewing aging, and then also help us get started with that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, I'm 64 now, and I started writing my book when I was 61, and what precipitated that was turning 60. And I started later. I have 5 kids, and I started later than most. I had my first at 37. So, um, maybe somebody might be in a similar situation if they started like in their early 20s or
Yeah.
something like, maybe they'd be 50 or whatever. It's just that time period.
I mean, it's almost exactly me. I think I started having kids at 27, so it's like,
Okay.
and I'm
Yeah.
33.
Yeah.
So it's like,
So, well, and I adopted the last 2, so I didn't. Yeah, we were like, you had babies that late.
yeah,
But
that is a miracle.
right. But yeah, I was approaching 60 and approaching 40. Oh, I was pregnant with my second. And those decade birthdays
Yeah.
are, to me, they were always like I would just sort of have this year prior to that birthday of introspection, like what am I doing with my life? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing or what just questioning but I was pregnant, with my second at 40, so I was busy.
Yeah.
And then I was adopting our 5th when I was 50. I was still kind of like asking those questions, but again, I was busy still. And so not a lot of time to just sit and whatever. But this time turning 60, I actually still have a 15 and an 18-year-old at home. My oldest 3 are gone. But I just, oh my gosh, I just was like, it's kind of freaked me out. I was just like, oh my gosh, I am 10 years to 70, 20 years to 80. That's just shocking. I mean, much more so than 40 or 50 were. I don't know, you just still think you're young and cute and everything.
Like,
Oh, I've got some wisdom now.
until you look in the mirror, you're like, I'm still 28, right?
But the wrinkles do keep coming. But anyway, it just kind of freaked me out, and I felt like some new purpose was about to unfold
Mm.
for like, what am I doing for this next decade of my life? I mean, what now I have been into natural health and wellness for, I mean, I'd say I started down that path 30 years ago, but I've been really into it maybe for um, 20 years. I started seeing a naturopath like 20 years
Mm.
ago and just a lot of that stuff. So I've always been interested in that, and longevity has
Mm.
always fascinated me. I mean, seeing people that are 90 or 100 even. We have a neighbor that's 105. It's
Wow.
just like, my goodness, what in the world? How did you do that?
Yeah.
What do you think the secrets were?
Yeah.
I've just always thought that was a real interesting question. Same thing with like somebody maybe that's been married for 60 years. Just
Yeah.
like,
Like,
wow,
how are you doing
how,
it? Yeah.
what
What are
is
your
your secret?
secrets?
Yeah, those questions have always fascinated me. So, but anyway, so I was just like, what do these next 10 years look like? I mean, they need to be good, right?
Mhm.
And so I just thought I'm just gonna have to say yes to a few things, and I was just really in this questioning mode. So I got involved in some online stuff. Um, have you heard of Jesse Itzler?
I feel like I have.
He's
Yeah.
married to Sarah Blakely, who invented
Okay.
Spanx.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's got that big company, and he's an entrepreneur in his own right and has bought and sold lots of companies. But I came across his Facebook group where all these people were just doing all this plan your life, plan your whole year, plan your most important stuff first, and
Mm.
then put the like work stuff around it and just
Mm.
really living your life, fully.
Mm.
Um,
Sort
and
of
so
like
I
the Love
got
Your
in,
Life show. Like, don't
yeah,
you?
yeah. I
Yeah, it's
mean,
like love the
like
life you're living, not just
Yeah, well,
what you should be
one of
doing.
his big things is every year he wanted us to, and everybody to have a misogi, and which is a Japanese word for a life-changing event.
Mm.
So, like, and so everybody's in the group, whoa, what's your misogi going to be this year? And, people would go hike up some big mountain, or maybe
Mm.
they'd decide to lose a certain amount of weight, or maybe they would decide to repair a relationship, or
Mm.
just go or do something that was memorable. The whole thing was you need to make it so you will always remember, in that year,
Yeah.
2025, I did this, right?
I love that. It's like,
So,
don't just keep rinsing and repeating. Like,
yeah,
do something. I mean, it's
each year,
intentional living. Like,
yes, it was
yeah.
that's what his whole thing was about, intentional living. He also wanted you to plan six like weekends, or it could be one day or a weekend throughout the year that were things you've never done. Things that are just a whole new thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and put it on the calendar, schedule it. So
Yeah,
he
I love
sells a
that.
big yearly calendar and wants you to plan it all out. But I was just like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And it got to March and I hadn't decided. And finally, I decided to do this thing called 75 hard. Have you ever heard of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And it's
Hard.
hard. It is. I was like, I am not your target market. This guy that invented it is like
Right.
tattooed and muscles and, you know, lifting weights. And, he's not that that's bad, but yeah. So, and I'd heard about it and I thought there's no way I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so 4 months went by. Well, then
Mm.
I'm in this group and I see people talking about it. And this girl, she could have been a friend of mine. I didn't know her. She pops in there and she's like, "Hey, I'm going to start this tomorrow. Does anyone want to join me?" And I thought, that could be my Masogi.
Yeah.
And then I listened to the podcast about it again and like trying to figure out because you have to exercise a certain amount and drink a gallon of water every day. I mean,
Right.
it's pretty
Yeah. Pretty
extreme.
tight.
Eat a certain way for 75 days straight. And so, but being in that group with
Mm.
all these people doing all these great things, I love that saying, you are the five people you hang around with,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. But we're like, if we're hanging out with people that are bringing us down, that's not going to be good. We want to just be around people that are lifting us up. And that group really did. I was just
Yeah.
just reading about all these people doing really neat things in their lives. And so, I mean, my mind changed in those 4 months when I
Mm,
thought at first, there's no way I can do that. I just thought,
hmm.
there's no way I can do that. And then I thought 4 months later, yeah, I think I can do that.
Yeah,
Like it would, the only
yeah.
thing that changed was the fact that I was reading about people doing really neat things in their lives.
Well, I
And
like how you speak to that because it's like surrounding you know, it is that we have so many opportunities, I guess. We can surround ourselves like literally with people around us, but also people listening to the show. If there aren't people around you doing things that are sort of pro aging and
yes,
uplifting, you can get them in communities and follow people like
you
you or
can.
me online. Like there are so many opportunities. And then also just the more we're around those kind of people, we get the group thing where it's like, oh, it's totally possible to do this. Or
Right.
it's totally possible to make new friends at whatever age, or it's,
Oh, I have to tell you, speaking of make new friends, I'll tell you it's a real tangent real quick about it was probably about 5 years ago, maybe it was a little more. I this son of this lady that I follow, he was in college. It was right when Snapchat came out.
Mhm.
And so, we're parents and the kids want Snapchat and we're all
Yeah,
like, what's Snapchat? Nobody
yeah.
knew. So this college student creates a course online for $7. It was everything you want to know about Snapchat for parents.
Oh,
So
fun.
a
Yeah.
bunch of us people, I didn't know any of these people, but we all got online and took the course. And then in the course, he's like, okay, everybody follow each other on Snapchat, so you're learning
Yeah.
about it. So we're all following. And all of these are like, I mean, the people I ended up just, you start liking certain people, and so there were, I don't know, probably 10 women about my age that we were all following each other and doing stories and stuff. And little by little, we just, would comment on each other's. Well, it was probably a year later, we ended up all going on a trip together.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's just, you never
that's just
know.
crazy.
I'm always saying,
Yes.
like, follow those sparks.
Yeah.
So did you ever have negative mindsets around aging? Like, did you
I
ever?
mean, yeah, I did. I mean, in terms of, gosh, just, looking in the mirror and just being like, oh, like
Mhm.
these,
Where'd that
and
come
just
from?
the
Oh my
wrinkles. Yes,
God.
and just like in it, I always thought, it all of a sudden it was like it would go in a 3 or 4 year cycle. Like for 3 or 4 years, I'm just used to how I look in the
Yeah.
mirror. And then all of a sudden it'd be like, oh my gosh, there's new wrinkles that I hadn't seen before, or just different things, on my body that just like, where did that come from?
I'm definitely finding that. Like it's just like all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, what is happening to my jaw? Or like what like I don't notice it. And then it's like, oh wait, like
I know. And then another 3 or 4 years, then I get used to what I look like. And another 3 or 4 years goes by, and it's like, oh wait, there's something, there's more. So that whole like just physical, I think, part. I mean, that's part of what I was asking when I was turning 60. I was just like, are my best years behind me? Like, is it just downhill now?
Mhm.
And this moment when it was right before I decided to write the book. I was with my girlfriend who we've known each other since we were 6. She lives in Dallas, and I was down there visiting her, and we went out and had drinks with some of her girlfriends who were also that same age. And we're all just sitting there talking and kind of talking about aging. And she said, well, I hear 60 is the gateway to old age. And I
Yeah.
was just like, no, no, I do not accept that.
Yeah.
And it just really, so I'm telling my husband about it the next day. And I just was, kind of passionate about it. And it's, they
Mm.
say your purpose can come out of what you're passionate about or what you're angry about, or, just those really strong emotions. And then it was about, a month later, I was doing a breathing exercise that I really like, and Wim Hof.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard of Wim
Yeah.
Hof? Yeah, his stuff. And I just hit me. I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to write a book. So,
Yeah.
so that, I mean, and that was the thing I was kind of waiting for. And it took me like 7 months of
Mhm.
really, being in those groups, doing that 75 hard, just like kind of, and I also got into a mastermind with other women,
Mhm.
with this really, again, online on
Mhm.
Zoom call with this really neat lady, where we just, looked at our lives and, what was
Mhm.
working, what wasn't working, just really analyzing things. And so through that process, I came up with that. And so, since then, that's been my purpose. I mean, it took me about 3 years to get it together. And
Yeah.
now,
Well, what I think I'm hearing, a couple things is one, not feeling satisfied with the status quo of like we just get older and more frail and more slow and more quiet and just sort of, that's like, that really is the progression of being a woman. Like,
hmm,
in the really worst case scenario, like we're here to get the species going. And then after your childbearing age, it's like, just be quiet and go be a good grandma in the corner and like,
yeah,
get
no.
your thing. Yeah, whatever it is. And what I'm hearing from you is that like, yeah, no, I'm not okay with that. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so
And
part of that, if a listener's listening to just, tap into that it literally is an option, I think is something that I'm consistently saying on this show. Like how we think is an option, and we can think that getting older is negative and bad and heading downhill, and we can think like, oh my gosh, like I have some great years ahead of me and this is awesome, and there's um so much more we can do. I remember listening to someone, I think she was in her mid 80s, and she said each decade has positives and negatives. Like
yeah.
every single decade of your life, like when you're in your teens, you don't have freedom really. Like you have to do what your
Hmm.
parents say you have to do, but you have a whole lot of mobility and agility. You can probably like wrap your cap behind your neck, and then
Right.
and with each decade there come more positives. The 20s you have more freedom, but you have less financial freedom, and so that really helped me to think just sort of like this acceptance of what life is. Like it's never all good or all bad. And
Absolutely.
if I want to focus on the good part, I'm going to feel better. And
Right.
if I want to focus on the bad part, I'm going to feel worse. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
I want to
Absolutely.
highlight that for listeners, that it like literally can be a choice, and sort of you coming out of dinner and you're like, oh, heck no, that is not the vision I'm going to look at. Like what, because there are also the studies that show women 65 and older are the happiest women in the world. Like
I
that's
think I think so far I'm having a great time.
that's
And
yeah.
I will have to say, I can say that for, when I think about my 30s and then my 40s and then my 50s, I mean, I will say I think I liked my 40s better than my 30s
Oh,
and
I
my
know I
50s
did.
better than my 40s.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think
my
I'm gonna
40s
like
were
my
better.
60s
Yes. Yeah.
better.
I call my 30s
Because
my asleep decade. It's like I took a nap. Like I'm like, I don't know what I I just like put my head down and did the thing.
yeah,
And then my 40s were definitely better than, and then my 50, like it just keeps getting better. And that's a mindset I like
yes,
thinking. And if we're looking for evidence of that, we'll find it. If we're looking for evidence of how it's getting worse and the negative aspects of, we're gonna find that too. Especially
absolutely.
with, you said your background is in health and nutrition, and it, I work with primarily women or all women. And so much of how we're programmed is, that our worth and our value lies in our beauty and our ability to do things for others. Like literally,
Yes, which
are
we
we,
pretty much, yeah,
patriarchy, the definition is like, like women are here to serve men. So are we serving in our tasks? Like what are we doing that's helpful for the society? And then also how are we looking while doing it? And I think there's a reason in our development where aging sort of, I like thinking of it as like pressing us to grow up in even another way, like to,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
what's coming
And
up.
our thinking is so critical. And our thoughts become our words and our words become our reality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I've for years, I mean, I probably started thinking this way, might have been in my 30s, just started learning about how critical our words are, the words we speak,
Mhm.
and I remember being back probably was in my 40s, and I had a friend, and I was just like, if you hear me speaking words that I don't want to be speaking, but it's this habit or whatever,
Yeah.
I give you permission to call me on it.
Mhm.
Like negative stuff or, I don't know. I don't like it when people own a disease. So,
Mhm.
I'm just in
I
that
have, or
space. I
yeah, yeah.
have, or my,
Mhm.
whatever the disease is.
Mhm.
No, just you can say the, or you can, I have an acquaintance who had cancer and she would call it sushi.
Mm.
She just
Yeah,
never
I like that,
wanted to
like a
say that
totally different
word.
association. Yeah.
But yeah, so our words are so I love have you ever heard of Dr. Masuru Emoto? He wrote a book called The Messages in the Water.
Mm.
Have you seen that? It's really you can Google this online and see these pictures. But he was a scientist, a Japanese scientist, and so he took water and exposed it to words like it was in say a glass with the word love on it or with the word war
Oh,
or
I have heard of
hate.
this man. Yes.
Yeah. And then he froze them into crystals and looked at them under a microscope. And he even did it with classical music versus heavy metal music.
Yeah.
And those positive words and music, well, the classical, were gorgeous, perfectly symmetrical crystalline structures.
Mhm.
And the other ones were horrible looking, just
Yeah.
nothing symmetrical about them at all. Like they looked like disease.
Mhm.
And it's just so crazy and fascinating. But
Well, it literally science shows us that now, which is so
yeah,
cool that like here we are in 2025, like it
I
literally
know.
shows us that like how we're thinking impacts our being, it impacts our aura around us, it can impact other people. And if we come into a room and there's negative energy because we're teenagers in there, like we literally can do some deep breathing and change the energy in the room, which is
Yes.
so cool. So just not discounting that at all. I recently heard a study from Dr. Reverend Beckwith, I think, who he said that he
Oh,
did a study
Michael
where,
Beckwith.
yes,
I
yeah.
used to go to his church.
Oh, that's so
I
cool.
led that 30 years ago.
Yeah. Well, he did something where he did, or at least he was talking about, but I thought he said that his team did it where he like in front of, so you and I are here and he'd strike a match. So you see the hot match and he'd blow it out and then sort of hidden in his hand, he'd have a non-hot match, like one that had, and he'd touch your arm with the non-hot match, like the one that hadn't been struck. But the
Uh-huh.
person in their head thinks they've been struck with the hot match
Oh,
and
uh-huh.
their skin literally would react, like their skin would
Wow.
get a little red mark because
Oh,
they think the
wow.
thought, which is again like the placebo effect with pills. I've done that before. I've,
Yes.
like
Hmm.
the other day I took like my vitamin D at night instead of my melatonin, and I don't take melatonin regularly, and I slept so well, and I was like, oh, that's so nice. And then I got up the next morning and was like, Susie, you took your, like this had nothing to do with melatonin.
Yeah, that's funny.
That
Yeah.
I think, it really is, our words matter. The words we
Yes.
say matter. Even something as little, like I don't like saying, like the nights that I don't get a good night's sleep, I don't like saying I'm so tired. Like I don't
Yes.
like, I like saying like fatigue is present. Like, and I just sort of, I'm like, oh, fatigue is present today. Like what,
Yeah.
I'm going to drink extra water. I'm going to get extra,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
I love
I
that.
am, it's that way. So that's one thing I just want to highlight that I hear you saying. And the other thing is
Hmm.
the habitual nature of our thinking, that we literally have neural pathways in our head in the habit of thinking negatively. We have our brain has a negativity bias, but we have the habit also added to that of just sort of looking for what's wrong or looking for what's to complain about or looking for what is, could possibly go wrong in the future, depending on if we've had past trauma and we're, hyper vigilant. And it literally can be a choice similar to like choosing how we're thinking about aging and just thinking about it differently. We can
Hmm.
choose to create the habit of more positive, upbeat thinking, not toxic positivity, like, when we're having a hard time being like, oh, you should feel fine about this. But
Hmm.
when we're feeling neutral, asking ourselves, like, what is good today? Or even I
Right.
like doing it, right now with the whole political climate, I like doing it like I'm feeling my feeling and I let myself have my feeling. And then I'm like, okay, and what good is happening right now? Like, look around,
Right.
like
Right.
good.
Right. I think we have to do that. I mean, one of the tenets of longevity is to be optimistic.
Mm,
And that's in one of the, I don't know if you've heard of the book Radical Remission by Dr. Kelly Turner. It's about
yes.
cancer.
Yeah.
And she talks about, you know, that is one of the things that you have to do. So it's just, we can, I love that idea that, 30 people can compliment us about something, and then one person can say something negative, and what do we focus on?
Yes.
We will focus on that one negative
Yeah.
thing unless
Mhm.
we're very just cognizant and self-aware enough
Mhm.
to not.
Yeah.
um
Right,
but
because
yeah,
that's what our brain does. Our brain is wired for survival. And so we needed
yeah,
to pay attention to the negative thing, but it's not helping us anymore. We don't need to pay attention to the negative thing, which also goes with aging. Like we don't need to pay attention. Like I can focus on whatever's happening with my jaw, or I can focus on how I can still, go out for a walk and have absolutely no, I'm like totally able to do it, no, an hour walk and just feel great. Or I can go to the gym and lift heavy weights and not be injure myself. Like we can focus on the positives. I can focus
yes,
on how nice
yes,
my wrists look and pay
yeah.
attention away from my
Exactly.
jaw. It is
Exactly.
like, and I guess the thing that I like to point out to listeners or remind listeners of it, it doesn't feel easy when we're trying something new. Like if we're trying to break the habit of focusing on the negative or thinking negatively about our age, deciding to think like, maybe like my best years are in front of me and
Right, right,
it's
right.
going to keep getting better. It will feel uncomfortable at first. And
Absolutely,
it will
absolutely.
take
And then we just have,
practice.
it's like fake it till you make it,
Yeah.
just like say the thing even though you may not feel the thing. Like say
Mm-hmm.
the positive thing. Um and I'm a big believer in environment triggers behavior. That's kind of one of my mantras. My friends say I say it all the time. I do. I'm just like, set up your is the whole longevity, like the blue zones, right? Well, their environments triggered their behaviors. So set your environments up to trigger the behaviors that you want, and if that means putting little post-it notes with those positive phrases
Mm-hmm.
that you want to be saying to yourself on your makeup mirror or
Yeah.
your bathroom mirror or your computer, like on the
Yeah.
side of your computer, where on your in your car or somewhere, wherever you're going to see those things, then do it.
Well,
I
because that's
remember,
deliberate and like more intentional thinking. Like our unconscious
yes.
brain is going to go to the negative. And so to
Yeah.
be deliberate, removing
Yeah.
it to the positive. And I will link it's episode on bridge thoughts, I call it, for warriors, because sometimes the thought is too big for us to believe. Like if they are so negative about aging right now, and then go
Yes.
into the thought like, like these might be great for me, or aging might be, that's too much. So we end up spending too much time in our like cognitive dissonance. And so a bridge thought, like I look forward to believing what Allison and Susie are talking about, can be something we put on our sticky. But then we need to practice it and feel it in our body.
I
That
mean,
like I'm aging
there are a
well
lot
is one I
there are
love.
a lot of yeah, there are a lot of people that they did not come into their maybe what their truest purpose was on earth, or just their purpose for that time in life until this time,
Mhm.
until later in life, 60s, 70s. I mean, do you know who Joan McDonald is? She
Yes, a weightlifter.
Yes.
Yes, I
Oh
just,
my gosh.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
She's now 78. And when she was 70, she was sick and overweight, and her doctor wanted to put her on more medicine. And her daughter is a health coach down in Mexico. And she lived up in, I want to say like Michigan or somewhere north.
Yeah.
And her daughter just said, Mom, come down here and let me help you get better. So
Mm-hmm.
she goes down there and just is, I mean, you can follow her on, she got like 2 million followers on
Yeah, I
Instagram.
will put her link in the show notes. Like any day
Yeah.
is a good day to change for sure. Yes, like, and anything is possible. I guess the point with purpose too is I think a lot of people get hung up on like, what's my purpose? And it feels so heavy. Whereas I think, and some people, like, I just think it's helpful for me. The way I describe purpose is like, you just follow your spark at the moment and you do something that is lighting you up. Like, we don't need it to be heavy. It's just do more of what you enjoy and you'll move in that way. So maybe when we were raising our kids, that felt very purposeful and in alignment
Yeah.
and in value, and that's great. And now what? Like we don't just have to stay stuck in that and now make our, like if we are not feeling purposeful as a grandmother, or if we're
Right.
getting that, like I'm just always saying, like listen to that inner warrior. And is she just like, I'm not so comfortable with that image of
I
what
think a
my
really
grandma
good,
was.
yeah, I think a really good thing to think about because, we get to this point in our life where, we've raised our kids or maybe we were in a career for 30 years that we're just sort of like, I need to do something different. Whatever
Yeah.
that change is was from. And I think I love to ask people, what were your dreams when you were like a teenager or in your
Mhm.
20s? Like really go back to that time and just remember, what were they? What were you thinking? What were and then of course you gain skills throughout your life. And so, you find those intersections and what are you passionate about now? But
And what did
I
you
have
enjoy doing?
yeah, what do you love to do? And
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
had
I
someone who
mean,
could remember, she had like a pretend like Fisher Price cash register and she like loved doing that. And so then she started working at Trader Joe's and she's freaking loving it because she's like, oh my God, like I love like pushing the little buttons. And she's like, I'm living my dream life, like, and
oh,
just
that is so
interacting
funny.
with
I love
people.
that.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
oh, that's so funny. Or did we enjoy curling up with a book and reading? Well, where can we
yeah,
do more of that? Or
right. Or volunteering. Like a lot of
Mhm.
times people will just, there's a million places to volunteer, right? And
Mhm.
that can really lead to like a whole new thing,
Yeah. And feeling like you're mattering. And yes, and it's just, I think a lot of it is that we get to whatever age we are with whatever we've done, like, whatever we thought we should do for society. And then we sort of like have this, I call it like a midlife awakening where we're like, wait a minute, I've been following the rules, but like, how do I feel? And we sort of wake up and there's a part of that we don't really know ourselves. Like we don't know what we like. We don't know. Like I knew what all my kids liked and where they like to eat dinner. And but like when it was like, where do I like eating dinner? Not because my kids won't have a tantrum because they have the coloring, placemats there. So that's why I like it. It's like, where do I actually like eat dinner? Where would I like to, vacation? Or and so there is
Yes.
that, as you're saying, like think back to what we used to like to do, and also just this experimental part, but permission to get to know yourself, that nothing has gone wrong. Like
Absolutely.
we were, had the lives we had, and now it's like there is a lot of freedom, more freedom to think about like, what do I actually like? Um,
Yes. That,
I
that
hear
getting
a
to know
lot of
yourself.
getting to know yourself, a lot of fear of loneliness and being alone and
Mhm.
being bored is,
Mhm.
and so then people will just sort of like double down and over parent their kids in their 20s and 30s, because it's like they
Uh,
don't, it's like sitting in that discomfort is
yeah,
too
which
much.
that can lead to bad relationships with
Oh, it will.
kids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. The smothering, not so great.
right.
Yeah. Or turning to other things, just, I mean, human life can feel hard sometimes. So then
Yeah,
we over drink or we over nag or we over, we do
yeah.
things that are not so helpful. So I just like your message of like, it's normal to
Hmm.
feel like, oh my gosh, who am I? What do I want? And
Yeah.
that it didn't happen overnight for you, that you're like, oh, I know, I'm gonna write a
Oh
book.
gosh.
Like
Yeah,
it's an
no,
evolving process and learning
absolutely.
about ourselves.
Absolutely. And I love that what you were talking about about getting to know yourself and like, well, what do I like? Because for me, I was a TV producer up till like 37.
Mm.
And so I had a lot of years, but those my 20s I got to 30 and it was, I think I was trying to, date guys and do what they wanted to do. And I
Yeah.
finally got to be about 30 and it was like, well, what do I like?
Yeah.
What do I like? No, I'm
Mhm.
not just trying to fit into some
Be
other mold,
accepted
which
by
could
them
also
and right.
happen with having kids, younger. And so
Mhm.
your whole life is about raising these kids. So again, you don't know what you like because
No.
you got to focus on that. But I remember in my case, being in some therapy in my early 30s and really figuring out what do I like? What do I like to
Mhm.
eat? Where do I like to go? What kind of vacation do I like to take? Just all those things. So that might those questions might be questions that if someone did start out having
Oh
kids
yeah, that
early,
was me. I'm like,
they're
I didn't
not
think of
even
those
thinking about
questions till
asking
my
until they're
early
in their
40s.
50s.
Right. It probably
Yeah.
saved you in your first marriage because my first marriage was all about him and fitting into that cookie cutter and
Yeah.
doing, and then realizing, like, wait a minute, like, this is
Yeah.
not me. Um,
Right.
so yes, that permission to get to know ourselves, to get to,
Yeah, I've always been fascinated with just self-development and just like, I love, well, I've done therapy off and on. I mean, not a ton, but enough. And then like things like, personality tests. I love the Enneagram.
I
Do
do
you know?
too. Yeah.
I love that. I think that one goes so deep,
Yeah.
to your childhood wounds,
Oh
which
yeah.
wow, that's really cool to
Right.
understand that.
Yes.
What
No, I
what number are you?
one. What are
Are
you?
you a one? Okay, I'm a four.
Oh, wow. Okay, so neat. Yeah. I literally just had a PDF here that I was like, oh, I want to, which had all the types again. But yes, it is. I love the Enneagram, but I love all of that, the
Yeah.
self-development, the learning about ourselves, the
Yes.
figuring
And I
things
think
out.
that just can be part of the process of like if someone is, depressed or negative about their future, about their aging, I mean, that's definitely one of the areas to I think pursue and look into and understand and um
Yeah,
yeah,
the Enneagram especially, like I'm glad that you mentioned that because more
yes.
than other tests, what I like about it is how there's a spectrum, like a continue, it can
Yes.
show, it's so helpful for me to see like how I'm showing up when I'm healthy and where
Yes.
maybe I'm showing up that
When I'm
isn't so healthy.
stressed.
Recently interviewed a woman, Dr. E, Deborah Egerton, who on the Enneagram, and I will link that again for listeners to listen to because that might be a fun thing for them to dive into. But that helps me a lot. And then even you just say it like you have typed yourself, so you are self saying you're a four, then that gives me like, oh, okay, I can understand like how she vibes
Right. Yes,
versus
yes,
Dr. E was saying like don't go typing everyone else because it needs to come from that internal motivation. But
for
once you
sure.
have it, it can be wonderful for self to see how you can
Yes.
move more into health and then also in relationships. I love it. And that's
Yeah.
another thing with aging is now we have more time to be like, okay, let's, let me do something, let me turn back to me. Like so much of
Yes.
life has been everyone else.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons this is such a great time in our
Mhm.
lives.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, I'm just like, here I am doing a podcast. I mean,
Mhm. Yeah.
and
Check it
I'm
out.
like, see ya, honey, I'm doing a podcast tonight. It's just like, okay.
It's so
So
fun. Yeah.
it is fun. It really is. There's a lot to look forward to. In my book at the end, there's on that subject of purpose. And if a person doesn't know, like they're like, I don't know what my purpose is,
Yeah.
I have 60 questions that they can
Mm.
ask
Oh,
themselves and kind of
awesome.
journal the answers to that I think can really steer people in a
Oh,
good
we might have to
direction.
do that as a book club. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm in Australia, so I haven't been able to get your book yet, but I'm
Okay.
working on it. But
Soon.
yeah, I will put links to that in the show notes because that's how you started this whole episode talking
Oh,
about being inquisitive
right.
and
Yes.
really stopping and pausing and being like, what kind of life are we living? And
Right.
that can seem scary at times,
Yeah.
but and also I think the other it is scary, but it's also, if we're looking at we sort of get scared. It's like, oh my God, it's going to be scary to stop and look at it, but it's even scary if we don't. Like it's scarier, like
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And for me, what I came to was, okay, all these things I've been doing for my life, really, I'm going to put into a book and a program
Mm-hmm.
that is going to be about longevity, about natural health, about planning. Like I'm a big planner addict, I mean, as a TV producer, wow,
Yeah.
wow, that's all about, you have to be completely organized and then I homeschooled my kids for 20 years. So
Oh my
again, it was
gosh.
like,
Yeah.
completely like planning and organizing and so I was like, what could I give people about longevity, about which are the important habits, um, and something they would do,
Hmm.
right? Well, you
Not
have
too
to have a
overwhelming.
plan. So
Yeah.
it gives you a plan, but um, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway,
can you
that's
just get like if someone's listening and they're in their 40s and 50s, what are maybe one or two key health habits that you think would make the biggest difference in how we feel in our 60s and beyond? Like put on your health
I
coach hat
mean,
for a
you know,
second.
this the longevity habits, I put them in a framework called the self-perpetuating circle of purpose.
Mhm.
And that has three pillars: body work, brain work, and world work. And so all
Mm,
the longevity
mm,
studies, the blue zones, there's something called the Human Longevity Project by another guy, went all over the world. There's
mhm.
all these Harvard studies. I mean, one with 226,000 women over a lot of years. There's that radical remission with Dr. Kelly Turner. They all kind of say the same things. And so I divided those things into those three areas. And so what that leads to is the 60-day dare. So the name of the
Mm.
book is 60 is a Good Start. Well, that has to do with 60, the age, which really could be 50 or 70,
Yeah.
anywhere in there.
Yeah.
But it was 60 for me. And then, but also 60 days is a good start because Dr. Caroline Leaf is the one that says this, that, habits take a minimum of 2 months,
Mhm.
60 days, to 8 months. Depends on what it is we're
Yeah.
trying to change. And this is thought habits or
Mhm.
just habits in my life, any kind of habits to solidify. So the idea is you pick something from each of those pillars and then you do it for 60 days.
I
And
love
so
it.
I
Yeah.
have a
So
planner
body,
that goes
brain,
with it,
and world.
and
So
world. So the
world.
world is your purpose and your relationships.
Okay.
So
I was
those are
thinking like
habits
it
with
could,
your
right.
purpose
Okay.
and your relationships. The body is going to be, what am I eating?
Mm,
Am I eating a clean diet? And everybody's different. So, but am I eating, clean diet? Um, Maybe I'll give something up for 60 days, or maybe I'll
mm,
add something important, or just do something different. Drinking is drinking, half our body weight in water a day,
mm.
at minimum, at
Yeah.
least. Move. We got to move our body, just like, and at this point in life, we just need to lift some weights because we need muscle. Oh my
Hmm.
gosh, that's huge. I
Yeah.
watched my mother, eventually have a walker and then a wheelchair, and her legs were she
Uh,
just didn't have any muscle in them.
yeah.
It was awful. And so they say for, really women, like for sure in their 50s, but probably in their 40s even too. So, just building that muscle is
I just
critical.
listened to
And then
Dr.
just
Bone.
walking,
Right, right. Well, the bones, we start losing our bone density in our
bone
30s. She said
density.
if she could go back and tell her 30-year-old self, like just start lifting heavy. And it doesn't
Yes.
take like my gym workouts are shorter than my walks, but it is,
Yes.
yeah. So the lifting
Yeah.
for
I
sure.
think that's huge. Lifting
Yeah.
heavy and walking are the
Mhm.
two physical things. Um,
Well, how
and
about
then
brain?
sleep. Oh my gosh,
Oh,
sleep is
sleep. Yes.
huge. We've got to be sleeping, I think, at least 7 hours. If you can sleep 8 or 9, that's great. But
Mhm.
that's going to be, I was listening to a doctor on a podcast the other day that was just, both of the people that were talking didn't sleep a lot of hours
Oh,
at night.
yeah. No,
And
just
and
because
this
you can
doctor was
doesn't
saying
mean
we're
you
both going to
should.
get Alzheimer's.
Yeah,
It's like,
for sure.
okay.
That's what I know. Dr. Amen studies brains, and you can immediately
Yes.
tell if you've been sleep deprived. And the problem, one of
Yes.
the challenges, is why we have more dementia in women is because we are more sleep deprived, just inherent in how we mother. Like
Yes.
it's not as easy to sleep when you're pregnant, and it's not as easy to
Mhm.
sleep if you're nursing your babies. And they say like that damage in our brain, and I'm like, oh, that's freaking great. But like, we want to make sure now that we're not adding to that in our midlife and beyond.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah,
At this point, we should be able to, hopefully, we don't have the babies and, you
right,
know,
right.
all of that, so we
Yeah.
can get a good night's sleep. But,
Perimenopause and menopause, but to prioritize it so we're in bed and we're not sabotaging ourselves with screens or
right.
um
Yes. Get the
yeah.
amber light bulbs. I just
Yep.
got amber light bulbs in my lamps and the amber glasses to,
Oh my God, my husband's just ready. Like he's like, Susie, it's like we're bats in a cave because I read somewhere like you shouldn't have overhead lights on like
yeah.
within 3 hours. So he's just like, what is going on? I'm like, just grateful we still have sunlights on.
That's so funny.
I know. I'm like, it's okay, sweetheart. It's all good for you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I love that. How about brain? Are you talking like
Yeah,
mindset or
brain is brain, it's like, have you dealt with the trauma in your life?
mm,
We all have it. We
hmm.
all have it in
Yes.
one form or another. I mean, it could have been something horrific, and it
Yeah.
could have been that somebody just said something that
How
just
we register. You don't get out of childhood
floored you for
trauma.
whatever
Yeah.
reason. Yeah. So have you dealt with that? And if not, you know, do some therapy. But I also in under brain, it's right.
Mm,
So journaling, journaling trauma, if you haven't
mm,
ever done that, just like get it out of the brain onto the paper. Or just get out every day. Your whatever's in your brain, just a daily thing,
yeah.
I love that book. It's like 30 years old, from Julia Cameron, The Artist's
Yeah.
Way,
Artist way.
Morning
Yeah.
Pages. Yeah.
Hmm.
So that's a great exercise. It's kind of like I don't know if it's called automatic writing, but just where she has you write 3 pages
Yeah.
and
Just stream of thought.
continuous writing.
Yeah.
Don't lift the pen up. Just keep
Don't
writing.
edit. You're a writer.
Yeah.
That's what it
Don't
is.
edit. Throw it away. Nobody's
Yeah.
going to see it. So, and then read. So at least, like 10 pages a day.
Mm-hmm.
Something nonfiction, something uplifting, something that's going to be self-improvement, or maybe you've got a business skills thing that
Yeah.
you want to do, or just inspiring, something.
Well, I like
Um,
that. Yeah. Because it also fits into, it's like they all fit together. I see why you're calling
yes,
it
they all fit
because
together. And
it's
then,
like that's also fitting you into the world. Because if you're reading something, it's like you matter. Like you learning
yeah.
about something nonfiction freaking matters. So
Yes, yes.
yeah.
Important, stimulating.
Hmm.
And then clear, which is a combination of decluttering your environment.
Mm,
Where are you the most? Is it your bedroom, your office, your kitchen? Where are you? Declutter. Like, just take a drawer, take a cabinet, take your shirts, whatever it is, and just little by little do that. Or also detoxing your house of the
mm,
chemicals. Like, get under your kitchen sink, your bathroom, your laundry room, maybe your skincare, whatever we put on our skin is going into our bloodstream.
yes, skins our
So
biggest
we need
organ.
to be
Yeah.
putting good, healthy things, in our homes, on our bodies, all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Candles.
And
I love
then
all that.
meditate. Meditate would include prayer and affirmations, meditation.
Mm,
So maybe, whichever of those works for you,
yeah.
10 minutes a day. And then create. That's the last one in the brain section. And
Hmm.
that is just like, it's 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 not like, this is not like if you're an artist and you sell your paintings. That would be more in the purpose in the world work. This is like an individual, just artistic expression that's like a de-stressor. Like, I needlepoint. I love
Mm,
to just needlepoint. It's like
yeah.
creating an heirloom
Mm,
give my kids someday.
yeah.
It's it's
Or creating
very
anything.
just
Yeah.
de-stressing. I give a whole list of a ton of different options,
Okay.
but and if you don't have anything, maybe just try some things out, and
Yeah, I think
but
that's
that can
another
be a
thing when
real,
we're learning about ourselves. See, like I got myself a crochet
yeah,
kit
what do
for
I
Christmas.
like?
I'm like, do I like it or not? And it
Yeah,
just we're going horseback riding this weekend because I'm like, I used to do that when I was younger. Do I like this now as a
right.
53-year-old or not? And I'll find
Yeah,
out.
sounds
Yeah, just
fun.
sort of that open. That's another part of the brain is that open mindset, like having
Yes.
really pushing back on what we think is possible. Even when you were sharing that you wrote your book, you first started with the thought like, I can't do that. Or I guess it was
Oh, yeah.
75 days where
Well,
you're
I
like,
thought that about the book too. I
right, like
mean,
I
when I
can't do
thought that,
that.
I
Who
was
am
like, oh, you
I?
can't write a book.
Right.
What are you talking about? My brain did that little, it was like there's another person in there. It's going,
Yes.
no, what? You can't write a book. Well, really? Maybe I can.
Hmm.
I don't know about that.
Well,
There's a
yeah, you
battle of the
talk.
brain.
Well, and that's another choice that we have in thinking that we have the choice that we can argue against our dreams or we can argue for our dreams. So that voice in our head that's like, oh, you can't, and this won't work. And
Yeah.
like, we can totally listen to that, or we can be like, well, maybe
Yeah.
it just like it came to me and I'm just going to marinate in it a bit. Like I sort
Yeah.
of think of like ideas having seeds and maybe you talk about being a planner. I might put that on my calendar. Like it sort of like floats into my sphere. I'm like, oh, maybe I could write a book. And I'm like, oh, I'll put that on my calendar for next month to think about. And it's
Right.
like sort of germinating like a seed. It
Yes.
seems a
Plant the
little more
seed.
doable. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was at a once I did this, I went to this, it was an online writers conference kind of
Mhm.
thing um and there was a keynote speaker and I cannot remember her name offhand, but you've probably heard of her and she's like probably 75 years old. She's written like 20 books. She's
Mm.
famous. She was a columnist for a big newspaper in like New York City forever, and I can't remember her name right now. But anyway, she said, and all the audience were writers or
Yeah.
wannabe writers, and she said every day she sits down and writes, like that's
Mm.
her habit. And she said every single day she has to fight that voice in her head. And that voice is like, you don't have anything good to say,
Oh
nobody
my
wants to read
goodness.
this.
Right. Yeah.
She's won a Pulitzer Prize even.
Yeah.
And she
Like
said,
a,
and every day I have to just, and she's even named him Nigel.
ah,
And so she's like, oh, it's just you, Nigel,
yeah.
get lost.
Yeah.
So even her, this Pulitzer Prize winning author of 20 books, every day has to deal with that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, we all do. We just all have to
I think
conquer
that, I
it.
mean, that's a big thing that we talk about in the Love Your Life schools. Like, just because your brain says it doesn't mean it's true. It's like, it's just
Yeah,
little brain bully in there being like, but it's
exactly.
really nice to, and I think some of us think like other people don't have those voices. Like, other people, it's like,
Yes, I think you're
Allison wrote a
right.
book. So, of course, she didn't doubt herself. It's like, no, no, she did.
Absolutely. I mean, all the way
Yeah.
through the process.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, is anybody going to even read this? Is this
Right.
any
What's
good?
the
I don't even
point?
know.
Yeah. And you just turn that volume down and you keep going.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it. All right. Well, if listeners will want to find more from you, I will put links to your books and your book
Okay.
and your project follow up that goes with it. Is there anything that you think that we haven't touched upon that you'd like to address or that you want to
I mean,
communicate
I
with
think
listeners in that?
the other I actually didn't get to the world work part, which just real quickly, I'll tell you those the
Mm-hmm.
five I
Yeah,
call them
please.
the big five of in each category. And the big five for the world work are dream. So if you chose that, you'd answer each question for 60 days if
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of trying to figure out what your purpose is. But engage, like we need to be having, significant, not texting, but significant conversations. It's putting family and friends first is a big piece of longevity.
Mm-hmm.
Putting family and friends first. And then help, volunteering,
Mm-hmm.
um, gathering, belonging to a spiritual community of some sort
Mm-hmm.
was really important. And I think it was this aspect of like de-stressing by just giving it to a higher power, whatever that is for you. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
taking that load
Being in a
off.
community of like, yeah.
Yeah. And then act is the last one, which is if you do know what your current purpose is, working on it for like an
Beautiful.
hour a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
So,
really like, I'm glad that you came back and mentioned that because also with what's happening politically now, I love, the focus on community and human connection and connecting in a positive way with people as things that, that really can save us and help us to
yeah.
generate that positive energy, that it's like we're not as alone as we feel getting out there. And if we look back at history, that's how a lot of people got through some tough times. Like that is,
Yes, absolutely. We need
um,
each other.
yeah, we do. So
Yeah.
looking and doing that intentionally. Well, I thank you so much for coming on. This has been
Thank you for
so
having me.
helpful, and
Very
I
fun.
just am enthused and inspired, and I love bringing people on that just show us like anything's possible. So
It sure
you
is.
got it. Yay. Thank you.
You bet.